Well, good afternoon, class. Well, at least I'm recording this on the afternoon. Um, Chapter 3. I find this to be one of the most intriguing chapters of the course because essentially what Chapter 3 has to do with is leadership theories and styles. And why am I so intrigued about this chapter? Well, actually, for a number of reasons. Because it essentially goes into power and leadership, and then really dives into leadership theories and leadership styles. And if you go to your textbook and you actually go to the introduction to the chapter itself, you're going to see a lot of very interesting things. And it's really, really important to understand that this chapter is going to identify several theories related to the study of management, but leadership is going to be unique because leadership, as far as management is concerned, really uses your DNA. And what do I mean by that? Well, leadership has to get your leadership style and what's effective for you to work into how you manage. Now, right now, that may or may not make a lot of sense to you, but it will as this chapter evolves. There are so many leadership theories, and every leadership theory, at least that I've looked at over the years, has to do with building character, building internal confidence. And there are a lot of variables that are involved in making that happen. But the characteristics of the individual are the characteristics that make up the behavior of the theories that we are going to study. All have to do with power and influence. But it might not be power the way you look at power, how most people look at power. You know, there's a lot of ways to look at power. You could turn a light switch off and on, and you got power or you don't. Or you have enough thrust to drive the train because you've got a powerful locomotive. The engine is big. But what does power have to do with leadership? It has to do with influencing individuals and integrating that influence based on a certain believability that you're going to bring others to a better place, including yourself, to where they presently are. And you're going to integrate that power by using a certain approach when leading. It's almost transparent. So in this particular chapter, our objectives are to understand the 5 approaches to leadership theory and the characteristics, traits, and attributes that make up that theory that lead to power and influence, but the way I just explained it. It's more of an integration, a transparency of being able to somehow mesh with the grain of your team to make something happen. And it's the integrative approach that works for you is going to be unique because it reflects back on your traits and your characteristics. And that is going to decide whether or not that approach is going to be effective or not effective. No theoretical approach in and of itself is going to guarantee leadership success. You can research different types of theories and see if those theories fit into the way you lead, like say with a Myers-Briggs that we just talked about. But is there any one thing that defines you in being an effective leader? Probably not. Probably it's a combination of things. But one thing that we do know is that leadership success has to do with building an inner self-confidence, that you see a vision, knowing that what you're going to do will work. Your book is going to tell you, and your studies, that leadership, to be successful, is going to involve three key variables. Believe it or not, your followers have an equal stake in your success as you as a leader. So right there you got two. The first key variable is you as the leader. The second key variable is your followers. How can you be effective as a leader if you don't have followers, right? And what about the situation at hand? How are you analyzing? How are you assessing it? What are you going to do if you're thrown into a situation and you don't know whether or not you've encountered the same situation before, but you have to make yourself influential as a leader to have others buy into how you're going to lead. So each of the three variables that we're going to talk about in these chapters, you as the leader, your followers, and finally, the situation at hand, are going to display unique characteristics which are going to tie in or identify with what we're going to study in this chapter, and that is the 5 theoretical leadership approach theories. And we're going to take it apart and see, we already talked about traits and personality. We want to know which of these 5 approaches might best fit into your leadership personality. And the thing is that, and we'll talk about this more, that many of us perform roles as a leader, and we have subordinates in our day-to-day stuff. We know this happens all the time. And we're taking that from the 2 key variable perspectives without actually getting into the situation. And the first is going to be the leader, the second is going to be the follower, and then we're going to kind of throw all of that in with the 5 approaches to leadership theory and see what we are actually doing. Are we the same people outside the organization or outside of our profession as we are inside the organization? Do we have to pretend to be somebody else when we go to work? And then when we leave work, we're a different person? Or cognitively and behaviorally, are we the same? We're just doing different things. So, in order to be able to really answer that question, you need to be able to develop yourself as both a leader and a follower. And I don't care if you are at the top of the totem pole as the leader, if you are the big cheese numero uno, the big boss, or you're a middle level manager, or you're an operational person that works on the, a supervisor working on the day to day stuff. Are you working, reporting only to yourself? Well, that's kind of strange, isn't it? I don't have any subordinates, it's only me. Well, where do you go with that? How do you influence the behavior of others? How do you propose to be an effective leader if you can't assess your behavior, internal and external to the organization that you work in? So one of the things that you want to do in developing yourself as a leader, discovering what your inner traits are, is conduct a personal review to determine what traits you actually have. Look at what you do on a day-to-day stuff, and outline the traits as they affect you in a leadership or a followership role. And in a given situation, how would you react, both as a leader or as a follower? This is kind of where we're going with this chapter. So what I'm going to do is I am going to put up right now, after you listen to this, which is a little bit longer than I usually take on an intro video to a chapter, but this is so key. My co-author of my first book on leadership, which is Leadership as a Choice. Leadership is a choice. Kenneth Strong, a wonderful, wonderful human being, a philanthropist in every way, someone who truly cares about people, and someone who was thrown in to a situation that he never expected and had to make good because it reflected his family legacy. And we wrote the book based on what we did together. And what he did, that when I say what we did together, I worked as a consultant with his organization for a number of years before I went into teaching on a full-time basis. Anyway, when we got to be good friends, we had talked about a lot of leadership theories over the years, and we had a lot of commonalities. And I asked if I could interview him and if he would be willing to help me with this class and tell his story. And he graciously accepted my offer. I interviewed him at Quincy College after I had recently, after I just finished teaching a course in first year seminar. The interview will follow. Enjoy this chapter.